I'm going to steal your cardboard box. I'm going to talk behind the box. Thanks everyone for coming. This is Allison and Brandon. They're going to talk about the Hacker Underground. Very excited to have them here. They've been doing a lot of research. When I first met Allison and she came on the show, she had a lot of insights as to what the malware and bad guys were up to. So I always appreciated that perspective. So really looking forward to their talk. So take it away.
Thank you, Paul.
So the title of our talk is A New Persistent Threat. I assume you can read. The original title was what, Allison?
Stalking children for fun and profit, but Brandon didn't like that title.
I refuse to have that title, so...
But that's what it really was.
Yeah, well, you'll see. So who are we? For those of us who don't know, that's Allison, I'm Brandon. Just get everything straight here.
I'm not Brandon.
No. There's Twitter, all that stuff. We wasted a lot of time on this before, so we're not going to, because there's way more interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So what is a new persistent threat, and why is it interesting? So the new persistent threat is basically composed of, for us, we're defining it as script kiddies, generally sometimes financially motivated, sometimes curiosity. They're essentially the lowest tier of the criminal underground, low-hanging fruit. They have really poor OPSEC, which is awesome for us. And they often frequent pretty public hacking forums, which is also awesome for us. So you may be thinking to yourself, I don't have anything worth stealing. Yeah, that's not true. If you have any of these, or likely all of these, yeah, someone's going to want to steal it. So deal with it. And actually, this data is from a RSA 2012 study, so it is relatively recent. I swear I will let Allison talk. This is just a bunch of crappy, boring stuff, sorry. So in 2011, Imperva started the Hacker Intelligence Initiative, and what they did was codify and do some statistical analysis on topics and discussion on one of the largest hacker forums, or public hacker forums, I should say. So what they did, what you can see actually is a transition from basic topics to more advanced topics, but also far more diversification of what is actually being discussed. I'm not sure how big the picture is, but if you look at some of the topic threads there, you can see some fairly hilarious things. Why can't I take down Google? Yeah, good luck with that, guys.
So there's a lot of different services offered on the underground, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because we've got more interesting stuff, but there's booters that are basically DDoS for hire sites, cryptors, which are used to encrypt malware so antivirus can't detect them, rats, remote administration Trojans, these are what people use to build botnets, exploit kit sales, that's what gets the rats onto the target, also credentials for identity theft, although these are more in the more underground forums, not in the most open ones. Also selling accounts like Gamertagjacking and password sharing through Netflix and things like that. Also escrow services, sometimes a trusted middleman is needed because these people are somewhat sketchy.
Trusted middleman. Yeah, you're still on a criminal forum trusting some random dude on the internet.
Yeah.
Not a great plan.
There's also e-whoring, where men pretend to be women and they use pictures and in pretending to be women. Homework services, which is what you think it is. Ebook sales, selling methods for doing hacking. And then graphic design, hosting, fake likes, and a lot of other things.
Actually, who was it that got sniped off of YouTube, like a billion likes because it was basically botnet generated?
I think YouTube did a huge cleanup of fake likes, but I don't think they targeted any single account.
There was a pretty significant, I think it might have been Sony or Warner Brothers. A large multimedia company got nabbed with basically generating fake likes in the number of billions. So, yeah, if you don't think there's a market for it, there most definitely is. So, reputation is actually really quite important in the criminal underground because that's really all you have. You have your name and how people know you. So everybody wants to remain anonymous, but in remaining anonymous, it's impossible to build any type of reputation. So it's a pretty delicate balancing act, and as you can see, they don't do it very well. There's lots of identifying information. Also, if you note the HF lead tag, yeah, just to get that, you know, oh yeah, I'm super lead. No, it's $20 to get that. So it's no badge or validation of anything. It's just you pay $20 to some random dude on the internet. So yeah, homework service. Yeah, it's probably not illegal. It's certainly fraud. Yeah, it's probably not a great idea to be asking someone on a forum who's probably about your age to write a paper for you. You might as well just do it yourself. Or just Wikipedia, really? Come
on. It's a fact that there's no girls on the internet, and when people contact you saying, hi, I'm a girl, let's make out, it's probably a guy.
And it's probably something like this.
Wait, you mean people lie online about their gender?
People lie online?
Yes.
Why would they do something like that?
We found out the hard way.
Yes, it's true. So the interesting thing about this is that this actually takes no technical skill whatsoever. This is entirely a process of social engineering. So you're basically mimicking a relationship with someone, and or an attacker would finds a target, mimics the type of relationship, shows interest, and encourages someone to buy these pictures, or cam time, things like that. So this was actually it was estimated by Imperva there were about 13,000 of these threads. Over the course of roughly 2012, so it's between January and October. And Allison spent about 2 hours photoshopping that.
And Levene.
And we can hook you up if anyone's interested.
Yeah. They're local to your area and want to meet you. Also, you can buy stolen credit cards. It's pretty nice if you need some cash. Just buy some cash.
H4X0R.
Yeah, he's actually pretty legit.
Yeah.
You can buy lots of stuff from him actually. So interestingly enough, the United States credit cards are not that expensive because they're really highly available. I think someone was talking about it. There was a talk yesterday mentioning how basically one of the most important things is securing payment card industry, small medium businesses. Yeah, they don't do a very good job of it, and it ends up right here.
And there's a lot of places where they spam credit card advertisements. For example, IRC. So here's a little bit of an IRC channel that I sat in for a little while. And it's basically a channel with a checkbot in it. And what it is you put in the credit card details in a certain format. Checkbot takes that, checks it against a merchant account to see if it'll go through. And you can use it to check the validity of the credit card details that you have. And so if you sit in these channels and you don't get kicked out, you can see credit card details spamming across the screen. It's kind of nice.
Or they're misconfigured like this one was.
Yeah, there are a lot of misconfigured checkbot channels. And also on Pastebin, there is a lot of credit card theft spamming. This one, it says, hello, my silent. I'm a hacker. I can sell CBD. And it goes on with this bad English. A lot of these Pastebin spammers, the ones we've been able to track down at all are of Vietnamese origin. And recently there was a big bust with Vietnamese carders. What was the name of it again?
That's actually the next slide. So,
okay.
So hold that thought real quick.
All right, so in these ads you can see the price of the credit card, and then they'll also give you free samples, which is very generous of them. Like so.
So I don't know how to pronounce that name. Matt Futur, maybe. So this is about $200 million worth of credit card fraud. It's roughly 1.1 million credit cards were sold on the site. It had 16,000 members. This was busted June 5th.
So there's also carder shops. If you are trying to buy stolen credit cards, they actually set up these little web application shops where you can buy them. If you want to pay for them, they don't take credit card. They take things like Liberty Reserve and Bitcoin. Oh yeah, there's no more Liberty Reserve, so too bad for them. They're going to have to take something else. But yes, in these web applications, they store the stolen credit cards and then dispense them to people that pay money. And this Carter.us site, a lot of them have vulnerabilities and they're not very well written. So this old Carter.us site used to have an issue where it would log every single access in plain text. And there is a file dump that we're releasing along with this talk that has a copy of these access logs. So if you want to have a look, you can see the kind of activity that goes on these sites, which is pretty interesting, I think.
Didn't you track down the person who was running this site? How did you get to those access logs?
It was just the text file on the site, that's it. It was just a text file.
Was this the UK kid?
No, it was the Albanian guy.
Oh, right.
It was either Albanian or Algerian, Al something. I forget. It's been a long time.
Alstar.
Alstar.
But that's also Allison.
Oh no.
At least it's definitely not PCI compliant in case you guys are wondering.
Yeah.
That's why they can't take credit cards.
They do take credit cards. They take all of them.
And then, yeah. And then they sell them back to you. So, booters are DDoS for hire sites. This is an example of two slightly older ones, but still alive. They don't actually always rely on compromised servers. In fact, they almost never do at this point. They use services like Ecotel, which offer basically fairly cheap hosting, and they amplify those attacks using open proxies. Or they make them look like they're much more powerful by using open proxies.
Either open proxies or open DNS resolvers.
Yep. So this is an example of one of the ads for a booter. You've got Olympus Dresser, and if you can't read it, it says "Stroke with the power of the gods." It's a little awkward.
And I swear I did not alter this image. A lot of these booters accept PayPal. Almost
All of them.
every single one that I've looked at accepts PayPal. And almost all of them are protected by Cloudflare.
We'll punch them in the face in a little bit.
Yeah. And also, since the last time we gave this talk, we basically had to replace every single image of the booters that we took because there's such a high turnover for booters. They're constantly getting hacked and then rebranding themselves so they can escape the shame of being hacked and get customers. So this is no more. This booter is gone. It's been replaced and rebranded as Poison Stressor. And
Notice the font's kind of similar.
yeah, the same staff is operating it. The same PayPal account is associated with it. Same font, and in that thread, it actually links to the old one.
So they're not
They're
make
not
very
trying to
good.
hide it or anything, but they just rebrand it, and then people buy their services again.
Yeah, the lifetime deal for $110, probably
It's
not.
not lifetime.
It's a couple
Maybe
weeks.
maybe a few weeks or a month or two. So there's a lot of booter source code floating around. If you maybe look around on leak forums, you can grab a dozen booter source codes in a half hour.
And we're releasing some of these, right?
Yeah, some of them.
Okay.
We definitely sent a copy to our web application vulnerability hunting friend. But there are a lot of issues with the booters. People take the source code and then recycle it and use it in their own booter, and then those vulnerabilities are not fixed, and then they get hacked by other people, and the cycle begins anew.
So actually, this the picture here is actually from a Rage Booter leak from about 2012. And speaking of Rage Booter, this is the guy that runs it.
Yeah, they really make no effort to hide.
Yeah, sometimes they don't know what they're, or they don't believe what they're doing is wrong. And they don't make any attempt to hide. Sometimes they post pictures in public for anyone, and sometimes they tattoo their username on their back. In Transformers font. He was very proud of that, actually.
Yeah.
So, okay, we have to set the stage here. So, Justin Poland was running Rage Booter. He then basically got it didn't get taken down, but he lost most of his business. He decided he felt like going legit, and so he posted on another underground site with all of his stats on, hey, I'm awesome, I can do lots of like legitimate things. Well, that didn't really go anywhere, but it did give us a lot of information to find him. So thanks. So after some nefariousness, which we can't talk about, this is his this is kind of his Facebook confessional, and if you'll notice, about the third paragraph down, he smokes a lot of weed. $1,200 is a lot. And so basically, it's sometimes you gotta feel bad for these people, but then you realize that they're actually criminals still, and then you don't feel so bad. So this is actually the main dashboard from the Ragebooter site. Every couple of days there are updates that are posted. When Allison was watching it, we saw about, what, 400 attacks per day?
Yeah, about 400 attacks per day.
It regularly gets hacked and reset. So this is actually the most recent version.
From about an hour ago.
Yeah, as Allison was bouncing down the stairs, Brandon, I need a new picture.
Let's make some last minute changes.
Yeah, I think she plans on making me anxious.
It's my goal.
Did a good job. So right after the first Krebs article discussing Ragebooter, the database was dumped, and this is what it looked like. So that's actually just evidence that we have the database, evidence that the entire thing was cleared, and whoever actually had control of the site basically put a, oh hey, charge back everything to try and make me poor, but that actually wasn't legit, and actually the site's back up now. So clearly law enforcement doesn't care very much. But, oh.
So, the Ragebooter infrastructure is actually pretty similar to any regular malware command and control infrastructure, except the servers themselves are owned by the booter owner. So, you can see here the flow of the activity. First, it starts with the malicious attacker, who is the web application user, sends the DDoS request through the Cloudflare DDoS protection into the Ragebooter web application. And then the PHP scripts in the web application forward the attack request to one of 5 different attack servers.
There's 10 now.
Well, there's 10 now, but there was 5 at the time. And if you're clever, you can find the IP addresses of all of them. And each server is loaded up with attack scripts that can spam the target with whatever traffic is desired. So say we're going to send a layer 7 Git flood, which sends a ton of Git requests. So that request is going to be sent to an attack server, and then the attack server runs the script for Git requests. And what it does is it sends a request to a large number of open proxies for the target to give the illusion of a DDoS, even though the only attacking server is just one server with a lot of bandwidth. And that's generally how booters work. That's normal flow there.
So let's talk about what doesn't work on that site.
Most things don't work on that site, at least at the time. So it could only do layer 7 attacks, and at that it can only do about half of them. It was largely non-functional when you wanted to do any kind of layer 4 attacks, such as SYN flood or UDP flood or DNS amplification attack. So some of the flood packets on Ragebooter, see here, it shows the username in the flood packet. So if you were sending a post flood using Ragebooter, the payload of the post request would be your username on the web application.
And that has to be by design. Like someone had to have triggered that or have written it that way. Also, if you can see, you can actually see the exported for header coming through the proxy. So
that's how the IP address of the attack server can be revealed if you look at the exported for, because some open proxies are configured to pass that through. And if you just watch your DDoS traffic, you can find the source. So Asylum Stressor is another booter on the market. It is no longer running after the Krebs article on it came out. It is also largely non-functional. Instead of layer 7 attacks, it was only capable of DNS and UDP flooding. It made thousands of dollars anyways, according to the database dump that was released afterwards. It accepts PayPal. It was protected by Cloudflare, and it was run by children.
Who we may or may not have stock for vulnerable profit. So this is the earnings report. There's a lot of numbers on there, but they're not terribly big. So roughly $23,000 in 2012 split between the owner and several support staff. Probably what, 3 or 4 support staff?
Yeah, but that's a maximum amount. The database dump did not record any chargebacks or taxes or fees that they might have paid.
Exactly.
Assuming they paid taxes, I have no idea.
So it's actually better to be on welfare. Yeah. And you would make more money.
So the database dump of Asylum Stressor also contains information about their customer base. So every time a PayPal transaction was made, the PayPal email was recorded, and that was linked with the database. So we took a lot of emails and looked at who is the typical user of Asylum Stressor. And the majority of the people were actually into gaming activities. Many were gaming admins, and some of them were actually complaining on their blog about getting DDoS.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this is just them taking up arms and starting a cyber war or something. There's also self-described gamers and self-described very elite hackers. And I even found one email. I plugged it into Facebook, and the guy on Facebook was a police officer in Florida. So it's all kinds that are customers of this. But we're not going to release these emails because it was a somewhat unscientific study. And we don't want to be accusing people of anything.
So a lot of these services actually have, or used to include 2 things. One was a Cloudflare Resolver. So this script here costs about $100 for someone to write.
You mean copy-paste from somewhere else? I've seen this script a lot of times.
Yeah, but someone had to write it at one point, and someone did pay $100 for it.
He probably got scammed.
Not big surprise. Anyway, so Cloudflare, essentially, if you've never seen it before, when you send a DNS lookup request to it, you will get a Cloudflare IP instead of the actual backend IP. So attacking that IP would be pointless. So Cloudflare Resolver essentially looks for DNS. It's basically almost a side channel attack where you're looking for misconfigured DNS records. Unfortunately, the Nmap script, DNS brute, does it better, and it's free. So I don't know why you'd ever pay for this. So this is actually something called Skype Resolver. Back in March, I contributed to an article about this. Essentially, using a tool like this, an attacker could resolve the IP of any target he or she wished, as long as that person was using Skype, and that would be unbeknownst to the target. So what this does is this is a PHP script which communicates with a remote VPS. It basically just sends a HTTP post request with the contents of the Skype name or whatever you're trying to resolve. Also, I think you saw there was a pretty big XSS in here.
Oh, they all have cross-site scripting in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's instructions, but yeah, not anymore. So all this does is a modified Skype binary sits on a VPS. It waits for, that VPS waits for an HTTP connection with contents of the username. The Skype client has been modified to 1, log debugging, and 2, do that in plain text. So what it does is it will actually request the contact card information from the target. It'll cache that information in the debug logs. And what this script will do is it will actually query those logs, pull that data out if there's results, and return it to you. As of May 24th, after 3 years of its vulnerability being public, Microsoft's latest beta client actually has an opt-in option that does foil this technique. And that option is direct connections from contacts only.
Yeah, that's after 3 years of it being abused by everybody.
Yeah.
TW Booter was another booter that also had its database dumped. Several months ago, it was allegedly used by the hacker Phobia to DDoS KrebsOnSecurity.com in combination with the swatting attacks against him and the messing with his cable bill. And
Yeah, they paid for his cable.
yeah, they paid for his cable bill with stolen credit cards to the tune of like $3,000 or something.
If anybody has any idea why you would do that, please speak up, because it makes no sense. I don't understand.
He has so much internet now.
Yeah, I'm gonna pay for your internet service. Cool.
Before they attack it.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I'm trying to DDoS you, but I'm going to pay for your stuff. Anyway.
You need internet to be DDoS with. That's it. So anyways, the Trebooter Database was leaked, and we found evidence of somebody using that site to attack Krebs Security at about the same time that Phobia was supposed to be doing it. The database also contained logs of 48,844 attacks launched over the course of 2 months. So clearly you can see this is a somewhat more popular booter that is used by a lot more people.
And you can see actually the number of servers that he rented. Most of them are in Ectel range, which is not that surprising. The stats on those are Xeon X30 3220s, 500 gig hard drives, 2 gigs of RAM. They have 100 terabytes of bandwidth, and then 1 Gbps unshared connections. And the general infrastructure will be Cloudflare, load balancer, Squid proxy, and then the NGI next backend.
So the Trebooter database also contained attack logs. So we could look in there and find the user agent of the attacker, their IP, the date and time of the attacks, and the target.
And the type of attack.
And the type of attack. So layer 7 attack or DNS reflection or whatever. Also, this is, okay, moving away from the topic of booters. This is Gamertagjacking. This is another thing that these people in the underground do. What they do is they try to find Xbox usernames that are really desirable. Like the people who are tracking
T-Rex,
T-Rex, F, face, like really short and desirable usernames. And what they did was they identified the tag that they wanted, and then they identified the owner using sites like Spokio, which is a legitimate site, or sites like SSNDOB, which is a malicious site, to find the owner's details and personal information. And the usefulness of this personal information is when you call the service provider to say, hey, I forgot my password, they're going to ask you something like, oh, what's your address, what's your name, what's your social? You give them that information, regardless of whether or not you're the person, and then you can reset the password and take over the account. And that's generally how this works.
This actually was the case that happened with Matt Honan when he lost his Twitter and his iPhone accounts. And
His everything
his
accounts?
everything, yeah. This is very similar to that type of technique. So this does expand far beyond gamertagjacking. Twitter is vulnerable to this. Any service where you can reset your password and account information by phone is essentially vulnerable to this.
Yeah, and we brought it up because the phobia guy that we mentioned earlier that was attacking BrianKrebs, he did this a lot to steal gamer tags and sell them, and some of them made pretty decent money per tag. And he also used this technique to pay for his cable bill because he called them and said, hey, I'm BrianKrebs, here's my address and all that. Here's $3,000.
It's a hefty cable bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a science joke. It's Krebs cycle. So this is what happened and how we got to know Brian. First off, he gets swatted. Second, BrianKrebs finds out everything about you. He's kind of Liam Neeson. Third,
He
SWAT
has a particular set of skills.
Yes. And the SWAT team visits your house and takes away all your things because you weren't very smart with OPSEC.
Yeah, the kid left a lot of tracks on the internet. We found a lot of YouTube videos which are now unfortunately deleted, but he would record them as proof of him taking over gamer tags so that he could sell them, but he would record his entire desktop and like he would be running AIM, So all his friends would sign in and he could see all his friends. And then he also had a little weather widget at the bottom, which had his hometown and what temperature it was.
I think it might have actually been Weatherbug, which is
So yeah, some kind of weather program.
which is embarrassing enough.
Yeah. Oh, he had so many toolbars on his Internet Explorer browser too.
And he was using Internet Explorer
Yeah.
in and of itself. So this is how we sort of got pointed in this direction. We were informed that phobia was suspected. We didn't have concrete evidence yet. So what Allison was discussing is we found his YouTube channel, and there was a whole lot of bragging on that, and the information came from his videos. We had Skype usernames, we had AIM usernames, we were able to correlate who their VPN providers were, operating systems that were being used, user agents. So there was, and also when you're using an email address, you know, on a hacking form, you probably shouldn't link it to your Facebook. Yeah, not a great idea.
You shouldn't reuse your email everywhere. And when you use a VPN provider and you're recording your whole desktop, don't leave a little thing in the corner saying you're connected to this VPN provider over this IP. It gives too much away.
Just a pro tip there. So this was something we came across late last year. It's called, it was called Booter Down. I don't think it exists anymore. So these pictures are historic now. But this was a concept by two Booter owners who had run TW Booter, which we had covered before, in order for them to try to monopolize the market and kill competition. So they would basically dox the booters listed to the left, but keep an eye on these guys because they're going to come up real quick. So, OSIN for bads are why I love OPSEC, poor OPSEC. Yeah, Maltego was pretty awesome. With just an email address, I was able to, this was how we tracked down Justin Poland. So, a couple things. One, he cross-posted multiple IM and email accounts. So he would make one post on form X with contact A and B, form Y with B and C, and so thus A and C are also related. Not that hard to logic out. But even better is once we found his business Twitter, which was used actually as a, what was it? It was a health check of the targets by his booter's targets. So it would automatically tweet the status of his booter targets.
Yeah, so if you look on his Twitter, it'll say this website's up, this website's down, up and down, like every few seconds.
Yeah, but he also used that Twitter to cross-link his dating profile. Yeah.
Single.
Yes, ladies, he is single.
Shocking.
Baffling, right?
I mean, I found him fascinating, so all you guys, you know, he's single.
You don't know what you're missing, or something. Sorry. So this is Mr. Orgy or Robert Dancin. He was sort of the mastermind behind the two earlier booters, Abso Boot and Urgent Booter, and it was also the original creator of TW Booter, which was at the time when we were researching, which was end of 2012, one of the largest on the market. And he had slightly better OPSEC, and also his name was a lot more awkward to Google. Orgy, not a great thing to Google straight up. I'll leave that for you guys to decide.
Look it up for yourself.
But he did cross-contaminate a lot of IM profiles. He did cross-contaminate a number of email profiles. He did also use his, he set up a business company with an associate, BB1, who's also the provider of the Black Shades Trojan. Called the company Big Cash, except he used that so apparently that Twitter account was taken. So he used a slightly different version of that Twitter handle, a Big Cash or something, whatever. But he tweeted his personal details to the original owner to try and get him to contact, himself in order to take over that account. So in doing that, he leaked all of his information, and boom, we found out that he ran the company, and well, you see the results. This is all the information that we were able to gain on both Mr. Robert and his good buddy Brendan. Not me. We're not friends.
So one of these striking things that we found when we were looking at different booters and even card shops was that they tend to abuse legitimate services, or, well, they use legitimate services. Almost every booter takes PayPal, and last I checked, about 70% of the booters use Cloudflare and are protected by them. Because it turns out when you're running a DDoS for hire website, getting DDoS is an occupational hazard. So many of them hide behind Cloudflare or other DDoS protection providers.
So actually, since our original presentation, Cloudflare's CEO had a sort of pointed reply to us, and
this quote came from an IT World article that was written after our BSides Boston presentation.
so pay attention to the word extra legal measures. PayPal was at least more professional in their response, so I can applaud them on that. So
does anybody want to go through some extra legal measures with us?
Yeah.
All right, fire up the VM.
old VM.
That's right.
So apologies for the likely horrible resolution. Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
All right, so we're going to do a Google search looking for a card shop. So we're going to write in buy, sell, dumps, CVV. And dumps and CVV are terms that carders use a lot to describe the kinds of products that they sell. So let's check out the first item there, pinkshop.name. Okay, so let's do a host lookup on them and find out which IP that domain resolves to.
I can't see what I'm
It's really
doing.
hard to read.
I can read. You're good.
All right, so we got some IP addresses there. Let's do a whois lookup on one of them.
Can't type good.
And scroll up a little bit. It is really hard to read. Does it say Cloudflare?
Yeah, that was real extra legal.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to do another one?
Yeah, let's do another one.
Okay, next item on the list. ccbase.biz.
Same painful process.
Yes. You know, maybe we can move it to the first monitor if you can't read it. I can't read it, so
Enter.
Press enter gooder. Oh, that's a slightly different address.
it may or may not be. I can't read it.
It is Cloudflare. I
Okay.
remember that
Do
range.
you recognize it? Okay. So let's do a whois on it. And is it Cloudflare? Is it? Okay, protected by Cloudflare.
So
So, yeah.
we can rinse and repeat for about an hour, but you get the point. Yeah. So extra legal is probably not the proper term or phrase.
Well, I mean, we
I
need
would.
to get a lawyer to do the whois lookups for us.
That's
Maybe
true.
that's extra legal.
I don't. Yeah.
Were we authorized to do those whois lookups?
I guess that's a legitimate question you could ask. I would counter with the argument of, what about due diligence?
Or don't
I mean, I'm
publish
not
your information, have the viewers come back blank.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not
even
a
a
judge,
even a
but-
simple who is guard type of deal of obfuscation there would probably point us in. It would make it a little bit more difficult. It's still not hard to figure out their IP ranges and figure out what's behind it. But again, his argument is frivolous at best.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say those websites do illegal things. So, we've been building a database of booters. Yeah.
And if if you don't recognize what that little thingy is,
So, if anybody is interested, we have a database of booters we've been building up over the past several months. What we would do is basically visit the website from the advertisement, note the domain and whether or not it's Cloudflare protected, and then visit the payment page and find the PayPal address, which is basically just out there. I mean, we didn't do anything special to these websites, we just visited them and recorded what was there. So we have a pretty big database, and we did a little bit of cross-linking emails to identities if we have the information. And the database also has some things that link different booters together because they have the same owner. So if you are an interested party, we can send you a copy.
I.e. someone who could possibly take
Yeah, someone
action.
who can do something about it.
Yeah, because we can't. So to tie it all together, how do you kill this? Well, one, public humiliation. Yeah. So many of these underground services are illegal, but it's not really worth spending police time or money. So they're more of a nuisance, really. So really our idea is that the key is private sector enforcement. So if PayPal and Cloudflare actually responded swiftly to complaints about illegal sites, most people would stop using them because the really convenient thing is, again, that PayPal is really easy to use, and Cloudflare is some sort of facade of protection, at least. So many users are casual DDoSers, and they're not going to follow this market if it shifted into Liberty Reserve, which is dead, or the Bitcoin ghetto.
Yeah, actually from the database leaks that we looked at, for the booters where there were multiple payment options and people could choose between PayPal or Liberty Reserve or Bitcoin, the Liberty Reserve and Bitcoin payments were less than 1% of the total. Almost everybody used PayPal.
And also, well, now Liberty Reserve is dead.
Yeah.
Along with Liberty Reserve.
Not very liberated.
Yeah, they don't have much freedoms. Yeah, it's a shame. So, just a little tidbit for you guys there. Any questions?
Yes, you.
Did you guys come across any booter sites run by technically competent people? That's one question.
So the question was, do you come across any booter sites that are run by technically competent people? And that's a very good question because a lot of our research is focusing on the very easy to find people. And there are definitely a lot of very smart people in the criminal underground. And the fact is, we don't see them. We don't have enough information on them and we can't track them. So all of these people, they're basically children. Like I said, stalking children for fun and profit.
And really, we should just CC their parents when we know them.
Yeah.
The other question was, have you guys suffered any backlash from doing this research?
So the question was, have you suffered any backlash from doing this research? And that is also an interesting question. So when this stuff was happening, we either didn't seek attribution for the research because it was posted on BrianKrebs blog, and we asked for our name not to be there. And even when we did have our name on some of the posts that he was making, we don't really have a website that can be DDoSed, and we really haven't seen any backlash. But after BrianKrebs made posts about these booters and stuff, he did get DDoSed on his site. But he also gets DDoSed when the sun is shining and when the sun is not shining. So, yeah. So
he acted as a great help for us in sort of shielding us from most of that type of thing. So thanks for taking that to the team.
Yes.
Did you find that most of the people through digging were domestic or international or split?
Yeah.
So the question was, do most of the people we find, were they domestic, international? The majority of people were domestic, and the majority of them were between the ages of 14 and 22, and white males.
Yeah, to be more specific, the owners of booters are largely either in the United States or in some kind of
English-speaking country.
English-speaking or European country. But with the Carters, that is much more international.
You'll see, yeah, a lot of the Carter stuff that we came across, you'll see Vietnamese we mentioned before, a large number of Middle Eastern countries, again, Nigeria, things like that. There are some Ukrainian, a large number of Russian as well. So it's interesting how you have a very large, a big gap in between what you see domestically and what you have on an international national scale.
Yeah, and another interesting thing is when we look at carders and try to track them down, it's a lot harder to track them down. I suspect it may be because the dumb ones got naturally selected out of the pool. But with booters, there's very little enforcement, so the really dumb booter owners, they operate publicly and they don't get shut down.
There's really no repercussions for these people. The police, FBI don't really care. The only reason why the feds got involved with phobia was because there was potentially large-scale financial fraud involved.
Yeah, there were other things going on there.
So,
Any more questions?
cool. Well, thanks Paul and Patrick for having us
Yeah,
and
thank you.
putting up with us again.
Thanks, everyone.
And at 10:20, we'll be back in here with Jack Daniel.